Adidas, Puma, two of the top sneaker brands in the industry. But did you know both brands were actually started by brothers? Brothers who hate each other's guts? Their rivalry stems from a bitter family feud that ultimately divided an entire German town and changed the course of sneaker history. But it didn't start out that way. At first, they actually worked together in a small family shoe company. But as the years passed and success mounted, the two brothers suffered a fallout of all fallouts. Today, we'll discuss the history of two of the biggest brands in sneakers and a rivalry between two brothers that led to some of the most iconic sneakers of this day. I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com, and this is Adidas v Puma, sneaker culture born from conflict. But before we get started, please take a second, as always, to stop and hit that like button for me. Liking and sharing these videos is the only way to help smaller channels like ours continue to grow. But with all that being said and out of the way, let's jump into the story. It all starts way back in the early 1900s Germany. Christoph Dassler, their father, worked in a shoe factory, which led to speculation that the two brothers were inspired by him to enter the shoe business. However, Christoph wanted Adolf, better known as Adi, to become a banker, and Rudolf, aka Rudy, to become a policeman. But Adi had different dreams. He wanted to be an athlete, and he used to participate in various sports as a kid. This experience showed him that there were no suitable shoes for athletes to wear in practically any sport back then. Adi believed that if a specialized type of shoe could be made for specific sports, then the performance would improve drastically. So he began making shoes out of the back of his mother's laundry room from used army debris that he found laying around. Rudy, who had been drafted and served on the front lines, will return from World War I and indeed pursue a career as a policeman at first. But he eventually decided that this wasn't really for him. So in 1923, Rudy joined Adi in his shoe manufacturing business, and together they created the Dassler Brothers Shoe Factory. What made Adi and Rudy successful was Adi's innovation of spiked shoes. His vision was to forge a shoe with spikes to give athletes better traction. This vision caught the eye of the German Olympic track and field coach Josef Weitzer, who became a close friend of the Dassler brothers. Josef gave them their introduction into the sports world by giving Adi access to the German athletes. In 1928, a pair of Dassler track shoes was worn by Lena Radek, who won the Olympic gold medal in the 800-meter race for the German national team. This marked the Dassler brothers' first major success, and it catapulted them in the industry in the early 30s, which also happened to be the beginning of Hitler's rise to power. This is where the history of the Dassler brothers gets a bit sketchy, to say the least. With the Nazi Party starting to form, the Dassler brothers saw this as an opportunity for business. Rudolf was the more ardent believer of the two, while Adi more so saw the political party as a means to reach the Hitler's youth so that he could make sales. By the mid-30s, the Dassler brothers had become a household name throughout all of Germany. They saw another opportunity with the coming of the 1936 Olympic Games, which was set to take place in Berlin. The legendary American track star Jesse Owens was the perfect ambassador to take the Dassler Shoe Company global. So Adi approached Owens and offered him a pair of free Dassler track shoes to use while he was competing. Owens accepted the gesture and went on to win 4 gold medals in 1936, giving Adi and Rudy the publicity needed to catapult them into the world stage. Sales spiked to nearly 200,000 pair a year leading up into World War II, and large orders of basketball, hockey, and baseball shoes began to come in. The relationship with Jesse Owens would prove to be far more important than just the immediate success though. When American soldiers came through in the latter years of World War II, they recognized the Dassler brothers as Jesse Owens' shoe provider and let the factory stay in function. Many of the soldiers even became good customers themselves of the Dassler brand shoes. With the war in full swing, Rudy became a bit power hungry. He refused to hire his 2 sister sons under the guise that he didn't want any more family members working for the company. The boys were subsequently drafted and died in the battle on the front lines. Tensions continued to grow between the wives of both brothers as they began to get into it with each other. Adi himself was later drafted, but shortly after, he was let out after his shoe company was deemed essential. Rudy, on the other hand, was not so lucky. He was drafted again. Mind you, he had served in World War I, and now he was being asked to put his life on the line again, and unlike his younger brother, he was unable to get out of it. He began to think his brother was responsible for having him sent off the war while he stayed back and controlled the factory. Rudy would be captured by the Allies and spent the rest of the war in jail, foaming over his fallout with his brother. At the conclusion of the war, Rudy was cut loose, but he wasn't out of the woods just yet. The Allies were in full swing of their denazification process. They arrested Rudy first under suspicion of involvement. He tried to plead his case, but ultimately he had to spend another year in jail. In 1946, it was Adi's turn to face charges. Rudy saw this as his chance to seize power, so he made a statement that his brother was in fact in weapons production, and he, Rudy, would have stopped him if he wasn't in a prison camp. So basically, he tried to snitch. Luckily for Adi though, the jury didn't quite believe Rudy, so he was found not guilty and released. And if the relationship between the two brothers had been strained before this, now it was completely destroyed. There was basically no coming back from this. Mutually agreeing they could no longer work together, they decided to split the company in 1948, dividing all of the assets and employees. These negotiations would mark the last time that the two brothers ever personally spoke to each other. Both of the brothers looked to rename their companies and differentiate themselves in the market. Adolf struck gold when he combined his first name, Adi, and his last name, Dassler, to form Adidas, or Adidas, as the Europeans call it. Rudolph tried to do this too by naming his company Ruda, but that just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? So he quickly changed it to Puma to sound more athletic and less silly. The split not only divided the brothers and their family, but it divided their entire hometown, with each side of the river declaring support for their respective companies. Any Adidas fans wearing Adidas shoes would find themselves unwelcomed on the Puma side of the river. This division went so deep that in the end, both sides would have their own bakeries, bars, sports clubs, etc. In the 1950s, Adidas gained a competitive edge with a revolutionary product, the first soccer cleat with screw-in studs, which helped West Germany win the 1954 FIFA World Cup. Puma wasn't far behind. In the 1960s, they made waves by signing top athletes like Brazilian soccer legend Pelé. Puma's strategy of athlete endorsement, including high-profile players in soccer and track and field, kept the brand in the global spotlight. By the 1970s, Adidas was a global powerhouse, dominating the football market and expanding into sports like tennis and running. The iconic three stripes became synonymous with athletic excellence, and Adidas expanded its reach into clothing lines and collaborations. Puma, meanwhile, continued to thrive in track and field and soccer as well. In 1985, they made a bold move by signing Diego Maradona, one of soccer's greatest players, strengthening their presence. However, the rivalry between the two brands remained fierce, with both companies competing for athlete endorsements and market share. Rudy Dassler would ultimately die in 1974 at the age of 76. He had spent his entire adult life building a brand in competition with his brother. Adi passed away 4 years later in 1978. And to the day that they died, they never made peace with each other. In fact, they even stated in their wills that they didn't even want to be buried next to one another. At the end of the day, from the outside looking in, it seems like the beef all stemmed because Rudy was a bit jealous of his younger brother. It bothered him that Adi was first in the business. It bothered him that Adi was arguably the more talented in the craft. And you know it had to bother him that Puma perpetually played second fiddle to Adidas. Especially now in the latter years, Rudy is probably rolling in his grave looking at how much Adidas has actually pulled away from Puma in market share. Both brands will go on to create a legacy in the industry that lives on long after both brothers. Throughout history, the two brands have been inextricably linked. Despite all their global success, the legacy of the Dassler brothers' feud remains in their hometown to this day. The town is still divided, with separate football teams and a clear Adidas-Puma allegiance among residents. But one thing is clear. This rivalry has driven innovation and shaped the sportswear industry as we know it. But what do you think? Which team are you on, Adidas or Puma? Hit us up in the comment section and let us know. And if you made it all the way through to the end of the video, then we hope you already hit that like button. But if you haven't, then what you waiting on? Go on and smash it for us right now, because liking and sharing these videos is the only way to get the YouTube algorithms to pay attention to smaller channels like ours, which ultimately helps us to continue growing. We've done a lot of growth over the past couple of months, and I can't thank you guys enough for being fans of the channel, and I appreciate all of the love. And if you want to be updated whenever we drop a new episode, then hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell. That way you can be reminded when a new video is released. With all that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out. Until next time, peace.